Why am I here? Every myth is us being played out by all these different characters represented in different archetypes. And that is part of this gamified version of life when we get to look at them and learn from them and orient ourselves as to where we are, what we're going through. So going back to the serpent, the same night that we had our session, I had a dream of the serpent. Another big theme we discussed was, being a Cancer, also from an astrology perspective, being a Cancer, I have these heavy ties towards the feminine. A lot of it was also the dancer, right? This theme of the dancer showing up in my gene keys, being in the flow, being in the moment, attuning to the rhythm of things. And by my own alignment to that flow, I become an example for it. And what's interesting is in this dream, the serpent met the feminine. So this isn't typically something I would ever broadcast, but since it happened literally right after our session, I feel inclined to tell you that I had this sensual dream where I was intimate with two women at once, but it didn't feel sexual in the dream. It felt very symbolic. And so one of the women I was with had her breasts revealed, but on her breasts were scars, these two long scars. And through the dream, they morphed into a serpent. Those scars morphed into a serpent. And the serpent kind of came out and looked at me, and we were sitting face to face. And as I embraced the serpent, I noticed the faces of the women start to look at me in a truer way, in a deeper way. And I knew immediately when I woke up, which was right in that moment, the encounter with the serpent, that there was just an obvious symbolism embedded within it. And so obviously, like I wrote it in my notes, I have my little ChatGPT session the next morning and decode the deeper symbolism. And one of the things that were so interesting to me is like the breast being like this vulnerable, nurturing energy, right? This feminine energy. And then the serpent's relationship to it shows that like that is my path towards the ascension, right? My own awakening, my own infinity comes from the healing of the wound and the scars of the feminine. And one of the most profound things about my journey has been that my first mystical experience that really cracked things open for me was when I was laying down in bed and I changed my perspective of my mom from being naive to somebody who plays that card just so I feel safe as I go and learn in life.
Wow. Yeah.
So for me, it's so clear that there is this involvement in the story with the feminine and how to heal that. I should also reflect that there are a series of synchronicities that I've been becoming more attuned to recently. Some of them are so obvious that it's almost laughable that I'm just starting to realize them. I think I might have surfaced these with you in a previous conversation. But first of all, I was born in Holy Cross Hospital, so it's symbol of the resurrection, in Silver Spring, Maryland, which is, silver and spring being like the moon or the feminine and the source from the feminine from an alchemical perspective. Mary land, like the land of Mary, the feminine. And then I grew up in Bethesda, Maryland. So the pool of Bethesda, healing the feminine, healing the feminine wound. And then I found myself in the middle of Marysville, Pennsylvania, which is like too strange, right? And I didn't even realize this until I was on a date with somebody whose first name means true image, but her real first name, like her real name, which isn't the middle name she uses, is Mary. And a series of things happened where I was like, this whole encounter is way too symbolic and alchemical. So I started to pay attention to the symbols. The next day I'm in a sauna, and I have a friend named Michael, and I find out, and so we get to talking, and I'm telling him about this. And he says, my last name is Marriott. And there's Mary, and then Ott is the measure of the feminine, right? The measure of the divine feminine. So it's like this integration of like the masculine and feminine happening in that moment of like realizing and embodying the wholeness of that experience. So a lot of things came together, I want to say, like by using my life as this mythology, but also applying those systems that you've shown to my life. And so at the end of our session, one of the things that stood out to me was the depth at which you're fluent in using these systems as a language for understanding life really reveals how thorough you were in searching, likely for yourself at the start, trying to make sense of things, trying to potentially climb out of your own challenges, right, and transmute those into gifts. And I see that in you. I see that as somebody who is devoted and feels that greatness. We kind of shared that moment as we talked a few days ago, which I think was awesome, right? And I do feel that greatness in you. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about where you are now, on your path, because from our conversations, from what I see on the outside, it seems like a really exciting place. And then maybe we can peel it back layer by layer, potentially following the different systems that you use to guide how you've gotten to where you are.
Yes, totally. And thank you for sharing, your story and this dream and this whole aspect of, mythology and understanding things through like different archetypes, because it's hard to kind of put into words how a lot of people ask me, what's my purpose and why am I here? And it's always, I want, it's like, I'm the same. My entire life, I was like searching for the answer of like, why am I here? What's my purpose? Because I did feel lost for a long part of my life. And it was when I started to study the symbols and then eventually led to, oh my God, these symbols, these archetypes are part of like mythological stories that are connected to the stars, the constellations, which then are connected to like history and like that whole aspect of understanding like where we come from as a collective. It really opened me up to start to see things from a whole new perspective. And that new perspective was in the world of dreams and symbols and archetypes. So when we have dreams and when we understand that a lot of the information that comes to us in life comes from the space of dreams and symbols, it can completely change like the way we see just life in general, like how we grow, how we expand. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that the symbols and the archetypes literally are everything, and that's why when you have dreams, and especially when they're so like vivid and you can tell that there's something important coming through, from that space, from that dream, from that symbol, that's when you can really truly tap into like, where is this magic found? Because the funny thing, coming back to people asking me what's my purpose, the answer is always like, Your purpose is what you're here to embody. It's what you're here to be. It's not what you're here to do. And that is, it's very clear, you know, in the lens of the gene keys, that that's, you know, the case. Because they literally have these specific spheres. One of them is for like what you're here to do, which is the life's work. And you uncover like the magic of each of those. And when you get to the actual purpose, it's more about what's within and what's inside. And the messages and the communication that flow from within to the outside are via the world of symbols. And so in the end, it's like a lot more about, you know, what you're here to, you know, be and like express in the world, and how you do it, not necessarily what you do. So yeah, that was just a really, just a cool way to kind of bring up this whole concept of, you do have to pay attention to the symbols and the dreams and the archetypes, because they're giving you messages, basically. You're receiving messages via this language. So all the systems that I've studied have basically just taken all those archetypes and symbols and put them together in ways that are like completely using those symbols and archetypes and helping us to understand ourselves. So I don't know where you know this is going, but I guess in this moment I'm just having this kind of epiphany of like, it's all the everything is about the symbols and everything is about the dreams, and interpreting those symbols is the fun part of like trying to like understand who we are here in this plane. Like that's how we do it. We try to like bring meaning to something that maybe it's not easy to understand, and we do it by using symbols and stories, you know?
Yeah. Stories for sure, right? That's why this show is a narrative. It's not necessarily to be anything other than a living mythology where someone can look at it and then extract meaning from the symbols that they might see for themselves. But the beauty is there are archetypes across all cultures where there is a consistency and a congruency. But as you know very well, when you're looking at symbols, it's really about what your perspective of those symbols are, right? A lot of people can look at a shadow, for example, in their gene keys, as you pointed out, and say, oh, I'm not greedy. But the greed can be a fuel and a catalyst for something that's transcendent, right? And so the same goes for a symbol, where our unique lens of what a symbol can be and our association with it is almost our soul's way of communicating with us. Hey, this is the way you view this. This is what you can shift, or this is what you should lean into. And your intuition is really what guides that. I would imagine that your fluency with symbols is profound, given the origins of the planets, of the constellations. What are things that you might see in your life that have stood out to you in terms of the symbols, or anything that might just speak to you in general that you don't necessarily have a name for?
I think that the thing that speaks to me the most from all of these symbols is the fact that it's like the combination of all of them together point to this like story, which is like the hero's journey, or, you know, the hero going out into the world, going to discover himself or herself, having to go through all the highs and the lows and, you know, trial and error, and then eventually coming out on the other side and finding him or herself, right? So like that whole aspect, again, is just repeated, that it's all the symbols literally tell a story. And you can see that story, right, through the archetypes of the astrology, like the wheel, like from Aries all the way to Pisces, and how Aries is the beginning, and it's like the baby of the zodiac, and then it moves into a different theme, a different expression, which becomes Taurus, more stabilized, you know, and then the next lesson comes, which would be, you know, the Gemini lesson. And there's not just meaning inside each of these like signs, but these signs are also connected to archetypes that are or stories that are mythological in nature from, you know, history, like Greek mythology, Roman mythology, ancient Egyptian mythology from all over the world, that they all kind of correlate together as to like this telling the same story of the hero's journey. So there's something really important about that hero's journey. And so in my life, and I feel like we all do this, we're all going on our own hero's journey. And so I can relate my experiences that I've had to that and how I have embodied the hero's journey in my life, because I 100% have, you know. And so I think that when we acknowledge that, hey, maybe we're all on a hero's journey, the way that we embody our purpose is like the different versions of the hero's journey, right? The specifics of it. It's like our life, like the, you know, what happens within the relationships we end up having. That's the specifics of the story, but we're all on the hero's journey. And so stepping into your purpose is about recognizing first of all, where are you on that journey? Like which part are you in? Because there's like a progression of the story. Like it's a very clearly defined story. And you can even see this story in like the tarot, the major arcana of the tarot, right? From the Fool all the way to the World card. It's the same story. It's just told with slightly different. So when we embody our purpose, we land in the hero's journey and we accept where we're at in the part of the journey. And then it's like, okay, where am I supposed to go from here? Right. So, and I have had the experience of that myself, which I could share, like what was my version of the hero's journey. But that's the thing that really sticks to me the most.
I fundamentally agree. And before going into your story, I just want to highlight the implications of that, right? The implications of being in a place where you can open yourself up to a map that exists around you, implying divine creation, yes, but also implying that everything is for you. And if you can look at the world as everything is for me, for my unique evolution, and it's speaking to me, but also everybody equally, it shows two things. One, you are the creator. Two, you are all the same, right? And the deeper thing to integrate there goes to show what's really going on here, right?
Yeah. And
but
yeah.
No, you go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say that you're right, that, and this is also something that's been really coming up in other, like, I mean, I'm coming to these conclusions. I see other people coming to these like realizations that we're living out a story. And I think we're getting to the point collectively, like collective consciousness, where we're starting to really see it like, oh, like we're starting to get a bigger picture, notice some like the patterns, right? There's a lot about, because it's a pattern, right? The story is kind of itself a pattern that, like you said, a map that we're all kind of living out, and we're doing that basically in our own unique way. But that's what we came here to do, is to experience it in our own unique way. So if you take the way bigger picture of it all, it's like the all consciousness, you know, the mind, the one being that started it all. In the beginning was this kind of void, nothingness, and from the void came everything. And that process of everything coming like alive was that one consciousness realizing, first of all, that it exists, and second of all, that it can create, and asking himself the question of like, first of all, like, who am I? And then who can I become? And in that who can I become is when the Big Bang happens, and you have this story of like, this is where we're all here because of that. So we're all one because we all belong to that one first consciousness, void-like space where everything came from. And at the same time, we're different because that was by design. This one being wanted to experience all these different aspects. Like, what if I tried this? What if I did this? And the whole story, the backdrop of the story, like if you take it wider and wider and wider, this whole hero's journey is like these 4 concepts of like expression, experimentation, integration, and transcendence, like over and over and over again. So the universe itself goes through these cycles, and we're the microcosm of that macrocosm. So in our own lives, we express, we're born, right? We experiment, we go through the hero's journey, then we integrate through life, we understand ourselves, we let it sink in, we become a little wiser, and then we transcend. And within those processes, there's many smaller versions of that, like many small, like symbolic deaths that lead to rebirths. Because this is that whole cycle of birth, life, death, rebirth over and over again. So I think it's like we're just living that out in all these million, billion different types of ways. And having that knowledge or that awareness is what relaxes you into your own story. Because we always, we want to be like, oh, I want to have the life that that person has, or mine's a little boring, or I don't like what I'm experiencing. Like we get in our head about the self-judgment about like what we think it should look like, but really what it should look like, it's exactly how we are. And that's why the passion for me in helping people learn the symbols within their story, the specific lessons, like you could say the shadows leading into the gifts of we picked like a certain number of them, like I'm gonna work on this one and that one and that one and that one and that one in this life, so if you change your perspective to life being more of a game, like a fun game, like then you get out of that low vibrational frequency of like victimization or poor me, or being like the martyr, or feeling like your life has no meaning. But even within all of that, that serves a purpose, because it's those moments where we're like down in life that hold the most powerful potential for like creativity and for the rebirth to happen. It's like we have to die to be reborn. And that's literally the whole point of it. There's nothing other than like, you're just here, enjoy the ride,
Yeah, totally. No. I can echo the darkness being the source of a lot of creation, right? I've heard someone say shit is fertilizer, and I say that all the time now, right? Because
so true.
It's so true. Like if you take the image of soil, that's where the seeds initiate, right? That's where the seed initiates, and then it blossoms into the sun. It comes out to the outside world, and it becomes the flower, which fruits, which begins another evolution. Right, so the cycles you're talking about, and I'm pretty sure this is all through the lens of Hermetic alchemy, which is awesome.
Yes,
and it's something that the 7 laws are things that everybody should study. The first law being everything is consciousness, talking about the fact that everything is, as you say, a universal mind, right? A universal mind. But then law number 2 is correspondence, which is the as above, so below, as within, so without. And what you've been describing throughout that is the fact that we can look at the cosmos, we can look at a cell, we can look at the microbiome, or we can look at nature itself and learn divine truths about what is, right? Through the way things become. An example of where we are now as a humanity, right? Say we are all collectively waking up. It's no coincidence that as you have an awakening, everybody else around you starts to experience it. That is the image of as above, so below, as within, so without. Right.
Yes.
And so if you look at the macrocosm, say everybody's going through an awakening, and then you want to relate that to something in nature. An example of that would be, talk about what the sun does for day, right? So we're at the sunrise right now, right? We're currently in the moment of sunrise, the awakening. We're putting light on things. We're illuminating. We're enlightening, right? So right at sunrise can be related to the myth of Osiris, where in the myth of Osiris, Horus represents the sunrise. He is the sunrise. Literally, the sun of Osiris rises, okay? But outside of that, you have to go through these initiations first. You have like this sacred rhythm of life, but when you lose it, because you're inserting your will on too many things, like Osiris did, you have to integrate your feminine, which is Isis. And when you get to integrate your feminine with your masculine, you conceive of Horus, right, who can hold both polarities. And that's where we're at as a society. You know, we've been so polarized, and so we had a feminine wound, but now we're integrating the feminine again. And then we're giving birth to this new awakening, which is the archetype of Horus. So it's so cool the way that you can map life in front of you with your own experience, with these myths that have transcended time. And yes, without a doubt, I would like for you to shed some light on, you know, what your version of that story could be like. Because to me, every time I've learned from somebody who's a thought leader or a teacher, it seems like their story is their medicine. I've gotten that from pretty much everyone who's been in my life, right? Like when I shifted from everybody's a teacher, whether they're explicitly teaching me or not, and everybody might be 2 steps ahead of me, whether it might seem like it or not, I began to enjoy life, right? The challenges became fun. The adversaries became allies. And that makes things so interesting. And as somebody who has the depth of understanding that you do, like how cool to hear about your way of getting there. For me, it was dark. It was a dark place. It was from the shit, right? And so I'm curious if that might ring true for you. Potentially we can start in the shit.
Yes. No, I 100%. And oh man, the story Isis, Osiris, you know, Horus, Set, you know, that whole, oh my God, yes, that story is the same thing. It's the same thing. The expression, the experimentation, the integration, and the transcendence that we're just constantly moving through these cycles over and over again. And I think that that's why the myths are here. Like they're trying to tell us, hey, this is what you're doing. Like they're giving us information, and the myths have stayed with us throughout all of history, that's the crazy part, right? That we held on to the stories. Coming back to my story, or stepping into my story, I'd love to share my version of that, like, hero's journey. So I was born in Argentina, and so didn't speak English. Like, Spanish was my first language. I lived in Argentina until I was 8 years old. My father's family comes from England, and my mom's family comes from Bolivia and also Spain. Like Spain via Bolivia. But it is the biggest trauma that I experienced in my life was when I was 8 years old, and my family moved to the United States. And so it's funny because we also talk about, there's something in the Gene Keys too that talks about the first 0 to 7 years of life, and how these 7-year periods create something gets like ingrained during that time. And it shows up in your relationships as an adult as a shadow, where you're trying to protect that like child inside. And that's often how it, you know, begins to come to our attention is through the shadows, right? But that was such a huge trauma for me because I was completely uprooted. I had to say goodbye, like all my friends, even my cats, like my pets. And I mean, as a child, I can, you know, you can't describe the sadness and like the pain and the, you know, the discomfort. So we end up, you know, moving to the United States, and now we're in California. They're like, our parents throw us into school. And we don't speak English. So I literally remember making friends, because in California, there is a lot of Spanish speaking communities. So I remember, I'm just going to make friends with the Spanish speaking people, you know, the kids, because they understand what I'm trying to say, you know? And so I remember I had this one friend, and I would ask her, like, how do you say this in English? I would ask her in Spanish, like, how do you say I need to go to the bathroom? And so she would tell me, and I remember literally, like, there's just like a vivid memory of like going up to the teacher and being like, can I go to the bathroom? And like, you know, it was so funny, but thinking back, I'm like, that's how it was, you know? So it was gnarly because from that point on, 8 years old, it was like I didn't know who I was anymore. My entire identity just got wiped off my life. So a totally new country, totally new language. So that was like, oh my God, the most traumatic thing. And since then, I still have trauma from that time. And it comes out in moments of like when I have to travel internationally. I get so freaked out about it for no reason, right? It's just that old trauma of like, I got yanked and, taken somewhere else and, I didn't know where I was going. And so that fear comes up, right? So like, this is how these wounds, like we carry them with us. But that experience was the complete catalyst for my spiritual journey, because from that moment on in my life, I was like, what is the point of this? What are we doing here? Who am I? My identity got ripped away and I had to create a whole new identity in a whole new country with whole new culture, So we made our way through life. I went to school, went to high school, went to college, university in California. But there was always something in the back of my mind that was like, this isn't it. I don't feel something's missing. I always felt like something's missing. And so one day out of nowhere, I'm like, I'm going to move. Like, I'm leaving California. And my brother at the time had been going to school in Boulder, Colorado, UC Boulder, for civil engineering. So he lived in Boulder. And I felt safe enough to go there because he was there. And I always have been kind of like a scaredy cat. Like since that point, I'm like, oh, I'm scared. I don't know. I can't do it. I don't know. That's been always a fear like that came from that time. But eventually I decided to just leave everything behind. And I had like I'd been in like a 12, something crazy like that, from like 15 years old, 12-year relationship with this guy.
Wow.
And I was like, and I couldn't, and I knew it wasn't the right thing. But
when was this?
So I think I was around, you mean like year-wise?
How old were you?
Oh, so when I moved to Colorado, I think I was 23.
Okay.
Around 23. In my 20s, early 20s was when I moved. But yeah, so I was like, I gotta get away. Like I was trying to like run away, but I didn't know why. And I didn't know where I was running towards, but I knew that I was running towards something that was missing. So anyways, end up in Boulder, Colorado. And it was really rough because I'd never lived in a place that actually had winter weather, like snowstorms and stuff.
Welcome. Mm-hmm.
Right? So oh my God, that whole experience in Boulder was like this huge, like it was like a dark night of the soul, like compressed. I was there for 12 years. But within those 12 years... You
lived in Boulder for 12 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
And within that time, which is significant, right? 12, it's kind of crazy. But within that time, so much happened in this compressed state that when I came out on the other side, I was like a totally different person. So I discovered yoga. I found yoga, and in yoga, they were talking about concepts that I was like, huh? What? Like breath work and connecting to God or, the divine, like feel your body. And I was like, what is this? But I was instantly drawn in. It was like a gateway for me to enter into this world of like, that I'm now like live and breathe in consciously. So the Eastern philosophies came into play. And then I ended up doing like, okay, I'm going to do a teacher training. I'm going to become a yoga teacher. And as I'm becoming a yoga teacher, I'm still kind of confused about my life. So I'm still going to school to get a master's because my mom wanted me to, not because I really wanted to. So I'm getting a master's, and I'm at the same time trying to blend it into my new like love of life. And I write a thesis on yoga and self-transformation. And I interviewed, I can't remember exactly the number of yoga teachers. I did like a little case study, a qualitative case study from the yoga studio in Boulder, where I interviewed all the teachers and I asked them about their journey and how yoga helped to change their lives. And essentially what ended up happening is that everyone was telling me the same thing. It wasn't necessarily the yoga. It was the acceptance of the self. It was the understanding that it's okay to make mistakes. It was the, hey, you can heal. Everybody can heal. You're not stuck. It was like that actually opened up the door. So I basically, like, what yoga did to me wasn't that it was like yoga brought me this enlightened thing. It was that I opened up and softened. It allowed me to soften, right? Because yoga stretches your muscles. So by nature, you get a little more flexible, and that as within, so without, it starts to show in your life a little more. I get invited by one of these yoga teachers that I interviewed to a peyote ceremony. And this is where the real story starts.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
And she had been going to these peyote ceremonies for a few years, but she felt like the feminine was missing. And so she hosts this ceremony, invites, the shaman, their specific roles within the ceremony by the leaders. And so there's like a roadman, the guy that runs the ceremony. Then there's a water woman. So there's like a masculine and a feminine aspect. There's the drum chief, the guy who plays the drum. There's the fire chief, the guy who takes care of the fire. And so there's these archetypal things within the ceremony space as well. So she hosts this ceremony for all women, and I get invited. And I was scared because one of the things that for me happened in my whole life is my mom was so paranoid for a long time. Actually, within the first few years, we were like in the process of getting residency and citizenship. And so my mom was always had this huge fear that like, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. Like we had such a sheltered childhood because she didn't want us to get in trouble in any way, get arrested or anything like that, because we could be, the biggest fear was like, you're going to get deported. It's a thing, it's a thing when you're like in that space.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're now citizens and all of that, but we got through that process. But there was this fear instilled in me, like, don't do anything bad. And so I'm sitting here and I'm invited to the ceremony where I'm going to take this medicine, the psychedelic medicine. And my whole body's like, I can't, like I'm going to get in trouble. And then so I'm like pushing that away because I know that where that comes from. And it's like not, but anyway, so I'm like this courageous, right? This is me starting my little
bite won't hurt you.
Yeah. Right. No, but I was so scared. And that fear is actually the fear that the hero must push through to get to the other side. So I was like courageous in the face of this huge fear. So I go to the ceremony and holy shit, like by the end of the night, I was like cracked open because in the morning, there's this aspect of the ceremony that it's the time where the water is brought in, and the water is brought in by the water woman. So like there's a woman that brings in a bucket of water, prays over the water, and then passes the water around, the bucket and the water around, and everybody drinks from it, and then it comes back. It's like a circle. And I don't know what, like I had never seen anything in ritual, in nature, sacred, prayer. It was like it blasted me. Like I had never ever had and watched something so mundane but so profound as praying over a bucket of water. Okay, so
I've never done peyote or actually any real deep psychedelic, and so I'm curious, describe the actual experience, if you could. Was it you were fully there, conscious, but the perspective at which you were experiencing the things around you was astronomically more elevated? Or do you see things? What's that experience there?
After that, I'll answer that in a second, but after that experience, I actually started dating one of the native guys that ran the ceremony. and I was in a relationship with this man for like 5 years. So after that, I actually was running the ceremonies with him for 5. I was the water woman. So, but this was the beginning. And that night, I didn't really feel any visual psychedelic, sort of what you would think happens when you take any kind of psychedelic drugs. Like you like people talk about it with ayahuasca, like, oh, I saw all these visions, and you know, it's almost like you're dreaming but awake. I didn't have that experience. I had the complete opposite. It's like I was like, is this working? Did I take enough medicine? The whole night, you know, I'm like, I was tired and I was sleepy and it was really hard. But what I've learned since then is you are going to see exactly what you're supposed to see. If you're not supposed to have a psychedelic experience, you're not going to have one. I wasn't meant to have one because I needed the raw experience. So yes, I took the medicine, but I just didn't have any but I did feel there's a sickness sometimes that comes with it, and sometimes there's purging during the night, during the ceremony. This specific ceremony starts at sundown as the sun sets and ends as the sun rises. Speaking of the connection with the sun, right? So it's like you go into the darkness.
The death, the reawakening.
Right? And that's exactly what all of these ceremonies are like. You enter into the darkness, you go through the dark night of the soul in a mini version that night, and you come out on the other side healed and reborn. So my experience of that was that there was a moment during the night where I was like, all the judgment came in. This is stupid. Why are we staying up all night? I'm so tired. My back hurts. My this hurts. I was just like in this like dark night. And I remember them telling us, you have to stay here. You can't leave. Once you're here, the circle is like locked in. Like no one can leave. You can go to the bathroom. There's breaks and things like that, but you can't just be like, I'm done. You have to stay, right? That's like, because people have tried to leave before, and it's actually dangerous. You don't want anyone running around, like, because there's a container, right? There's a container, and people are responsible, you know?
Yeah.
So anyways, I was told, like, I was just given like slight instruction of like, you know, we're going to be here all night. Okay. You know, and while you're in it, you're like, what is happening to me? You know? Okay. So we get through that part, which is the dark night of the soul part, which is right around like the midnight hour, like from midnight to 1 to 2, 3 a.m. Once you get past that time, something shifts. And that's what happened with me. Something shifted. And the songs, and that's when the medicine, I think, kicked in. But the medicine for me was a heightened sensory experience. And it always was like that for me. Yes, throughout the next 5 years, I did have some powerful visuals, but more than anything, it was a heightened sensual experience. So my senses, my hearing, my sight, my smell, you know, all of these senses were like heightened. And throughout the night, I mean, there's these powerful songs that are sung, and they it's like they pierce the vibrational frequency of those songs. They just pierce through all the freaking shit, and they break it apart, and they break it apart, and they break it apart, because everybody that sings with the rattle and the drum, and it's a water drum too, which is really cool, that gets created, that gets like put together for each ceremony and then taken apart for each ceremony. So it's so intentional. I'd never seen anything like this in my entire freaking life, right? So I'm just like looking like, what is happening? And I'm being cracked open and cracked open and cracked open, and I didn't realize that that's what's happening. But then in the morning, oh my God, I'm getting like emotional. But in the morning, when my friend brought in the water, my grandma had died when I was 18, and that was like, whoa, so crazy and so hard. But I felt my grandmother. And for the first time, it was like, whew, there was nothing in between me and her energy. And so I had this sort of like, whoa moment where I'm like, I thought there was a separation, but there was not. Like, she's right here. Like, I feel her. She's like literally hugging me. I didn't know how to describe it, but it was like pure love. And I literally, when somebody wanted, we were going around the circle at the end of the ceremony and everybody was sharing. And I was like, just sitting there quiet, like crickets, you know, I was just like, oh my God. And this guy, right, that I ended up being with for 5 years, he invites me to share. And I'm a projector in human design. I didn't know anything about that back then. But the invitation was what I needed in that moment, in any moment, right, as a projector.
Mm-hmm.
So he invites me to share. And I literally just like, oh my God, like my purification that night was like this emotional release of all of this shit that I had been carrying for years. It just, oh my God. So I was sobbing, I was crying. Like that was my purging. I made everybody cry because I was just like sobbing. Like I couldn't describe what was going on, but I was like so grateful. I don't know. It was crazy. Okay. So from that moment was like the blast, like, poof, all right. And so it begins the real journey. Right. So this relationship with this person was actually the dark night of the soul, because it was twisted with, I'm this shamanic figure in the community, but outside of ceremony, I'm this very toxic, not healed person. And so I'm experiencing this duality and very confused. And I started to realize that it was the world, it was my life, it was my experience showing me what I had basically, how I had suffered as a child with my mom and her duality. And I mean, it's the mother wound is the most insane, right? So the relationship just brought into my environment my wounds with my mother that I had to heal. And it put me in a space where I was like acting in a play, because that's kind of how life is. And I started to see my shadows too. And towards the end of this relationship, I realized I am participating in this. And the only way for me to like fully heal is I have to stop doing this toxic thing. I have to stop doing this codependent thing. I have to stop reliving the shit that I grew up with.
It's so profound. When you recount your story, the elements you use are the parts your soul wants you to pay attention to. And if you look back on what you were saying, the first moment of arrival to your initiation at the ceremony, the first ceremony, what stood out to you was the water that was passed around by the woman. The water by the woman is the symbol of the womb, of the recreation, right? And so that was your point of initiation, of like being born again, essentially, into this new identity that you're crafting for yourself. But what happened is you also became the water bearer. And when you became the water bearer, you were beginning to realize, listen, when you were the water bearer, you were beginning to realize that you were living out patterns of your own mother. So when you realized that you didn't want to repeat those cycles, that's when you went through a dark night of the soul. And I would imagine as this progresses, it's a series of things that you had to do to deconstruct your ego, to completely remove who you were and your identity, so that you're not attached to that anymore, so that you can be who you actually are. So I'd be curious to continue to move into those elements.
You just blew my freaking mind.
Well, I'll say that because the more you pay attention to the stories and the symbols, you'll understand these things. This has all happened in my life in its own way as well. We actually happen to both be connected to the story of the feminine. Towards the end of this, I'll show you the different ways that I've identified. But I first want to hear your story. For me, I mean, mine on every level, every system will tell you that I have a feminine wound. And what I'm here to do is to heal that wound and to return to rhythm and to be the embodiment of that rhythm, of that dance. And it resonates with me on a profound level, but the beauty I want to highlight is the reason I'm able to see it in you is because I went through the same damn thing. And so part of the beauty of suffering, outside of it creating our origins, is it also reminds us how to connect. It reminds us that I went through that. I know that. And I feel that in you. And that alone heals the wound of the separation that we're all experiencing.
Sat now.
Yeah.
Completely. No, you literally just blew my mind. Like I need a minute. No, I'm just kidding. But I never I never saw that. Like I became the water bearer. That's just yeah. Wow. So I mean that was it. You know, that was my life in Boulder, and it was so ingrained by this experience of ceremony and ritual. And that was the time where, I mean, the songs that I sing now, I learned during that time. And there was also something, you know, that the whole thing about being the dancer, I have that aspect in my chart too. And things come really natural to me. And there's this like part of like life making things seem easy. So the songs came to me so easy. I learned the songs like within days. Hundreds of songs, you know, peyote songs, we call them. Straight chants. And you sing them in ceremony and it's your turn, when you have the rattle and the drummer. And you always have to sing 4 songs. There's like a structured aspect of it, which is essentially the 4 directions, but again, coming back to that concept of expression, experimentation, integration, transcendence. It's like the symbolism within the symbolism within the symbol. It just never ends. It never ends. You know? Yeah. So that
cool.
was it. That was my experience. And since then, once I left that relationship, which was me literally leaving the abuse of my mom. It was so crazy because it all was related to healing my past instead of the actual relationship. The relationship was the stage to help me realize what I was really needing to heal.
Right.
You know? So when I left that's when it got really dark, because I had to face the worst fears, like I don't want to be alone. I don't want to be by myself. I don't know what to do, all this stuff. Then I faced the real fears. And so since then, right, all this time since then, that was around like 2016-ish, where that relationship finally ended. And I actually met my husband now, who was actually played a huge role in supporting that process, helping me through that process, not doing anything for me, because you have to do it yourself. Nobody can do the healing for you. And that's one of the biggest things that everybody wants or asks for, like, give me the answers. Tell me what to do. It's like, I can't. I can only open the door. You have to step through it. So he helped me open the door and be like, you can be over here if you want to. You can be on this side. You don't have to stay stuck in that darkness. And I freaking brought myself out little by little, day by day. I'm not saying that like life is done being scary or dark now, but the awareness is so different now that I can face things with all the tools that I've collected. And that's what makes the difference, is that I'm on the more of the integration part of the process, right? Yeah.
That alone shows that you have transcended what you were afraid of, what your wound was, which was unintegrated shadows, which was living this split life between the shaman and the wrongdoer, right? Where you realize you're actually both. Inherently, we have the capacity to be both. But we have to be sovereign in recognizing that, accepting it, integrating it, and then following the path that we're meant to, right? And you've already done that, you know, and so now it's like, it is at the place where you recognize that, but you're also a sovereign. You're playing, you're enjoying, and it's reflected in you. So, you know, post Dark Night of the Soul, tell me a little bit about Sunrise. And, you know, if there were things your husband brought to the table that were specifically useful for you, I'd be super curious to hear what those might have been as well.
Yeah. So he actually opened me up to thinking outside the box, kind of a thing. Like, because I remember one of the main problems that I had, and this kind of relates a little bit to my human design. I have a lot of open centers. I only have two defined centers, the ajna and the throat. Everything else is open centers or undefined centers. And in those centers, you were naturally taking energy in from the environment, from other people, and magnifying it. So I was so engulfed.
So quickly, open centers that aren't defined on our charts means we're consuming, attracting, absorbing that energy from the external environment. Defined centers or channels mean that we are like creating it, pushing it out, expressing it.
Pretty much.
Got it.
Yeah, the defined energy is consistent. You can count on it. It's like it's more you, but the undefined, it comes and goes depending on where you're at, like a kind of like a leaf in the wind kind of a thing. So, anyways, because I have so many of these undefined centers, I was so sensitive to other people's energy, and so being in that toxic relationship or any environment where there is quote unquote people who are fully expressing their like shadow and darkness, and it's toxic because there's no awareness of it, so it's just like abusive. I was stuck in these really dark emotional spaces where I thought I couldn't get out of. So one of the first things that my husband did was like to show me that I don't have to stay stuck there.
Yeah.
You know, that I can feel emotion, but I can pull myself out. Like, it's not going to be forever where I'm going to feel sad and depressed, because I was sad and depressed for years.
That's huge. You know, one of the biggest, most fundamental things for me echoes that in its own way, where I completely resurrected when I realized that I could find out anything I want to find out. Like, there are answers. You don't just have to sit in your own isolation, in your own bubble. There is a reality where you can find out, where you are everything, where the mind itself is a tool that you can transform in order to have different experiences. And the implications of the mind being what create your reality gives you, yes, all the accountability, but also all the power to transform your life. So like that awareness, that knowledge alone gave me the path forward. And I think that's kind of the reason these conversations matter, because so many people just don't know that there is an opportunity. There is a life outside of the bubble. And when it's dark, you're forced inward. And sometimes it's blurry. It's blurry as hell. So that's why it's so awesome to be mirrors for each other. Like, hey, I was there, but I can't pull you out, you know? That's because it's only you. It's all I. This is all I, right? It's the universe, right? Like, it's all an I thing, and we have to go inside to pull it out ourselves. But we have to trust that everything is a reflection, which is our guidance system and our compass. Right. And when was it throughout this journey for you that you started to adopt tools to help you navigate, to help you, you know, where were you? Were you like involved in hermetic alchemy from the beginning? Was it astrology? When did that become a part of the picture?
So first it was really deep into yoga and yogic practices. So breath work, body movement, body awareness, body mindfulness. That's where it really started. And the Eastern philosophies of yoga, you know, mixed in with kind of, you know, Zen and, you know, Buddhism and things like that. And then, so I did a lot of yoga teacher trainings, tons of regular, I call like regular yoga and Kundalini yoga. To me, they're like super different. But when I did Kundalini yoga teacher training, that's when I started to learn different types of concepts, more than just like we move our body and we breathe this way and that way, because Kundalini yoga takes all these ancient philosophies and theories and concepts like the chakras, the systems of the body, the gaze, you know, because the connection is, and it was always like this, that this is what opened me up to this whole concept of hermetic alchemy and this ancient wisdom, was that we have a physical body, but we also have energy body, like a soul, Like
Right.
so that's, you have to come to an understanding of that to understand what, because otherwise you're like, what are you talking about? Most people are like, I don't get it, because we're so in the physical. We have to see it and feel it to believe it. But I slowly moved from that to I have to believe it to see it. But anyways, so it started with yoga, and it started with these concepts of learning about the chakras and how they're connected to emotions. And then, well, now I know that the chakras themselves are connected to the seven laws of the universe,
Yes.
right? So, like, these things were planting seeds for me to be like, oh, to have the epiphanies later when I did eventually start to study actual Hermetic alchemy, like reading the Kabbalion
Yeah.
and, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth and think, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, like, that's the deeper sort of study into that, but that came later. But these concepts of the chakras, the energy bodies, the 10 bodies in the Kundalini yoga, there's this whole concept of there's 10 bodies, and it's like the soul body, the pranic body, the physical body, the pranic body. All of these were just opening my mind
Hmm.
to this whole concept of like, who are we and why are we here? Basically.
Yeah. No, fundamentally, it was very similar for me, but I want to jump back quickly to how when you were in your darker times, right? It was the information that there's another life that exists for you that allowed you to jump into that. And I
Yeah.
think the same goes for Western esotericism or any of these more mystical traditions. If you lean into them, you begin to experience them. You begin to embody the reality behind them. It might be curious in the beginning, you might be skeptical in the beginning, but if you're just fundamentally an open-minded person and you explore it, your life will change. You will begin to resonate with the teachings, with the words which are encoded, with mythologies, with archetypes that exist within your soul. And let the rest do the talking, because the journey itself is you going and interpreting those for yourself. No one else can do it for you, but you'll love it because you'll be inclined to do so. So the very information of these things existing automatically expands your field, your
Yeah.
awareness,
Mm-hmm.
your consciousness in so many ways. It was very similar for me. So and I can talk about this
I
forever, so
know.
I
I
won't
know.
really dive in. Like we won't get to get through
It's
this.
never gonna end. It's never gonna end.
Um, I'd also just like to capture the fact that outside of the systems, right, that you use and you guide people through, um, what are the different systems that you use? Give me the arc from when you began to explore these different elements and when it became a practice, and what all are the different systems that you do look at? Because I've seen so many others outside of just astrology, human design, gene keys. So
Mm-hmm.
that arc of your story, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, totally. So I always knew that astrology kind of like existed. I started to be introduced to it also within the yoga world, because some teachers would have little workshops and be like, the sun is blah, 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 or like, there's these, transits and this happening now. And I was so intrigued by all of it. But it actually wasn't until years later that I started to bring the aspect of astrology in and start actually learning it. So
Mm.
I found one specific astrologer that I still follow. His name is David Palmer. He calls himself the Leo King. He's crazy, like out there, like he's super intense. Like he's not for everybody, but he's so
Mm.
my jam because I have Mars and Saturn in Scorpio, and so does he. We were born like a month apart. We have our moon. My moon is at 0 degrees of Leo, and his sun is at 0 degrees of Leo. So we have a sun moon exact conjunction, and 0 degrees is like a really powerful degree and number. And so I feel just like kindred spirits, soul connection to him, like a brother from another mother kind of a thing. We're very similar in that aspect that there's parts of us that are just like seriously intense, and I love it. But he's not for everybody. But he is definitely for me. And I just dove into learning from him, and thank God he started offering classes and things like that. So I bought books and I started reading, and so I taught myself a lot. There was a lot of self study, self teaching that happened just by being drawn to, let's see what this book teaches me. And I just started collecting, and then getting recommendations like this book is really good. And so I just kind of just studied. I just like went to school myself for astrology, you know. Once that was kind of really set in, I started to dive into the gene keys, and it was really a progression. The gene keys is the aspect that I call the feminine aspect of learning about yourself. It's very contemplative. It's very reflective. It asks you, it doesn't give you any answers. It just gives you more questions to sit with, which I feel is, I mean, yes, you get some answers, but it's not specific, clear cut, like number 1, number 2, number 3. It's more like take the information in and sit with it and see how it begins to change you at like a cellular level, which is another concept that takes like a time to kind of understand what does that even mean, you know? But there is a process that's happening because the book itself is a transmission. Richard Rudd channeled the gene keys just like Ra Uru Hu channeled human design. And when you read the book, it's like you're holding the transmission. And when you read each of the gene keys in your hologenetic profile, you're absorbing that transmission. It's in word format, but it's an energy. It's like encoded, and it enters into the auric field. And that's the process of contemplation that he talks about. So like it showers you, it comes into you, and it brings a specific message, and you receive it in your own unique way, because that's why we have our own unique design, right? That's why you are the one that has to sit with the process. So I did that for myself with the gene keys, and I took all of the courses that he has on his website available. And because my brain works in these very like, I love systems and I love patterns and I love finding the connections between the things, I understood how it all worked really well. So I started to actually help other people do that process for themselves naturally, just for fun. And without realizing, I was like helping people, like guiding people go through their gene keys. And then that was happening, astrology was happening. And then the last system that was kind of brought in was human design. That was the most recent. It's only been like a year that I've taken a human design class. It's crazy. But because I have all this other foundational knowledge, the human design just went click. Okay. And so I just started to like, bring it together, like synthesizing all the 3 systems together. And those are pretty much the 3 that I use, but I'm also very familiar with tarot and the archetypes in the tarot. And so I bring, and I've studied Hermetic alchemy. I've studied, the laws of the universe. And I teach it in my program that's called the Moon Goddess Training. It's kind of like all of it together. I've studied with Matias de Stefano, who teaches about the temples along the Nile and the initiatic path that we went through as, students in ancient Atlantis to learn all of these concepts. And the whole thing is like, you have to learn how the universe works to be able to like know where you're standing and have direction as to where you're going, or where do you want to go, and activate that aspect of like will, wisdom, and love, because we're essentially spirit that descends into matter, and in the matter we have to use our wisdom, will, and love to ascend back to spirit. And that's again another way to describe that process of like the hero's journey. So those are basically the 3 that I use, but when I do a session, I'm pulling in information from all other, places that have just along the way I've collected.
Yeah. Cool. I think that's how it should be, right? The things that spoke to you become your unique transmission as well, right? I was actually taught the I Ching from my meditation teacher at Clear Vision, in a very similar way that you describe Richard explaining how to receive the gene keys. And he also went on to add that communicating with or communing with the I Ching is like speaking to a 100,000-year-old best friend, with a little bit of a sense of humor, because as you begin to read the codes and they unravel, you're like talking to yourself, and it's like almost whimsical because it knows you so well. But the reason you embody the experience of knowing you so well is because you're just being honest with yourself. It becomes a mirror for you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you're seeing what exists in your depths in the very words that you're using to reflect on the contemplation, which is beautiful. That's why they say contemplation is like water, because it's a reflection of you. Mm-hmm. So super cool. And I would love to be a moon goddess. How do you how do you sign me up for the moon goddess training? Come on, I'm here to embody the feminine and heal the feminine wound.
I know. I get this question all the time now. It's crazy. I'm like, what am I gonna do? Because there is a sacred container with, the women in the class that I feel is definitely part of the reason why we all have such a powerful experience there. It's like to hold that sacred container of the sacred feminine. But oh my God, you have no idea how many men have approached me and been like, so how do I learn this? So I don't know. I feel like I'm gonna have to come up with like a brother program to the sister program. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where
or like in alchemical marriage, right? You can merge them.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
But I totally respect the feminine. Like I think having that bubble, that incubation, that hub,
there's something special that happens when women come together in spaces like that, and then there's like a safety, and there's just some things that like not that it can't happen with men and women in the same classes. There's just something special about it when it's just the women. But yes, everybody needs to know, like, I mean, I'm not saying everybody needs to know, but there's a lot of people that want to know and that are inspired to learn all of these things. So yeah, in the works, I guess I would say. It's in the works.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think there's definitely going to be more of an appetite for it these days, right?
Yeah.
There's a reason for it. I think it's just the beginning. And speaking of which, I'd be curious to hear if you were to feel into like where you're at right now and what you're anticipating and maybe bracing for. Like, what is the experience you're going through?
Yeah, oh my God. I mean, quantum leap would be the way to describe it right now, especially last year and this year. We're really like the last 2-3 years. I've had to go through processes of like letting go of what I thought life would look like and just surrendering to what the hell is here in the moment. Part of that process was my husband and I buying property out here in northern Arizona desert and starting to build a house and having to move into the house before it's done. And living in a unfinished house has been the most insane, most powerful teaching experience I think I've had probably in a long time. It's tested me beyond, my limits, but it's pushed me beyond the limits to a point where like, I can do this. If I can do this, I can do freaking anything.
Oh yeah.
And that's how we learn,
That's
and
right.
yeah, and I mean, I'm talking like no insulation. In the summer it was like so hot. We're slowly working. I just now got my wood floor. I mean, like completely unfinished house. We live like in a wooden box.
Just start a bathhouse, sauna situation.
Exactly. It's a big box, but still. But anyway, so that's been a huge part of my experience the last couple of years. And along with that, astrologically, I was experiencing the culmination of a cycle that in astrology is called the progressed full moon in last year, where all the work that you've been putting into everything in life for the last 14 and a half years comes to a climax. So to tie into the story that I told earlier to this progression for me, that ceremony was the initiation of the cycle. It was a new moon in Cancer in my progress chart, literally when I was at that ceremony, the very first one that I went to. And it was the Cancer is the moon goddess. She's, Cancer is ruled by the moon. So the moon is the strongest there. It's the high priestess. It's the sacred feminine. It's emotional flow. It's nurturing. It's the mother. It's all of it in one. It's water, so emotions flowing. And since then, 14 and a half years later was 2024. And that's when the full moon came in Capricorn, which was stepping out into the world, sharing what you know, being seen and being recognized. That's Capricorn energy. That's like Cancer is the home. Capricorn is the outside the home, how you show up for the world. So that 14 and a half years was just so synchronistically sandwiched for me.
Sure.
In the astrology of my progressions. So when this full moon came, I knew, because by this point in 2024, I was like, something's big. Something big's coming. Something big's happening. I could feel it. It's exciting. I've been doing the work. I'm like, all right, let's see. And I was just fully open to see how it unfolded. And so last year was when I got invited by Robert Grant to be on his podcast, because I had done a show on him where, just for fun, I was like on YouTube with a friend, like looking at Robert's charts and being like, he's so cool, like, because I was really inspired by him. Because he was like he's doing some amazing stuff. And I was like, what? Like mind-blowing things, especially connections to the King's Chamber and the Giza pyramid. So it blew my mind, but it did not. It surprised me in a positive way. I was so excited because as a projector too, I have to wait for the invitation. But a projector's signature in human design is success. When they're not living in their design, they're going to be bitter. But when they're in the design, they are literally designed to be successful, because what they're here to do is to help guide others into alignment. So his invitation was also the ultimate, pulling this profile of the 2-4, which is the dancer and the server, pulling that hermit part of me out of my cave, literal cave environment in my human design. Like my environment is caves. Pulled me out of the cave and was like, it's time, like little grasshopper. You need to go out into the world now and like share what you know. And that literally happened last year. And then we recorded the podcast. I did a reading for him, and we went, and then he invited me to come to Egypt. And that was like, oh my God, that's too much. But no, hell yes. But oh my God, this whole, like, this part of me is like, oh my God, it's happening really fast. That's why I'm saying it's a quantum leap. Because I was like, here we go, off to work, And then after the Egypt trip, I come home, and it was so perfectly timed. The podcast finally comes out. And since then, it's like, I even messaged him directly. I was like, the floodgates have opened, because you will not believe how many freaking followers I got on Instagram from that podcast, how many YouTube followers, how many messages I got, how many bookings. I mean, I had to literally, like, I was not ready for the kind of like flow. I'm booking out until like July now, and it's never been like that before in my life. So I'm having to rearrange life to fit this new quantum leap. But obviously it wouldn't have been here if I wasn't ready for it. And I was ready for it, and I'm excited about it. So right now I would say I'm like trying to navigate through this like crazy expansion, growth. And so but I'm like, wow, like wow, I've been waiting for this for a long time. So just being seen and being recognized by the right communities, peoples, networks. I mean, for me, it's huge. And then here comes you, because you somehow saw how I was put out there, and you were drawn, to work with me. And this is like this is like my jam, like these conversations, these like so inspiring. And so I'm like, I guess you could literally say living the dream.
You have this glow about you, and I know for a fact it was there before you experienced this quantum leap in your mind. You wouldn't have experienced any of that if you hadn't had a quantum leap that existed inside of you before any of this. It was all because of you. You stepped into that already. You already are that person. It's just like time is doing its thing on the outside of adjusting in the physical world. You've done it. You are that person, right? And you also are what you are becoming. And man, I see that in you. You are so cool. I love your energy, and you bring it home so nicely. I have to touch on one last little symbol here. So, you also use that microphone to create your own songs.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
This doesn't have to be long, but I would love to hear quickly what that means to you.
So, ever since I was little, one of the things that I always loved to do was sing. And I was blessed with like a nice voice, not like a Christina Aguilera or anything like that. I was kidding. But I have a nice voice, and so I love to sing. And I sang when I was little, like I belted out all my favorite songs. Like when I was little, I always wanted to be a famous singer, you know. I like grew up listening to freaking like, yeah, Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears. That was my, like, I'm a millennial. So like,
Yeah.
but anyway, Celine Dion, Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston, you know, like some of these singers are like freaking amazing singers, you know. So I was just, I would love to sing. I took singing lessons when I was like in my early, like 13, around there, 14, 15, like that. And eventually when I was 18, I decided that I wanted to learn how to play the guitar. And so I asked my dad for my 18th birthday to get me a guitar. And he did. He got me a guitar. And I had no idea how to play it or anything like that. So I went online, because by that time we had the internet and stuff. Oh my God, I'm like totally dating myself. But I went online and I basically had this experience where like I searched for how to play the guitar or like how to learn like bar chords. And again, because my mind it's a very visual thing and my mind wants to like understand patterns. I looked at these, I printed all these sheets, and in the sheets, there was like how to play the C chord, where to put your fingers. And I'm not a musician. Like I never studied music or anything like that. I just literally taught myself where the fingers go to play this chord, where the fingers go to like literally. This is like my life story. It's like I've taught myself everything. And so then I pulled different songs, and I think one of the first songs I learned to sing was Hotel California on the guitar.
Amazing
so
song.
Much fun. Yes.
Yeah.
And then from then I just practiced playing like songs, like covers and things like that. But when I finally got to that moment where I was in Boulder, Colorado, where everything was starting to crack open, suddenly I wrote my own song. I just wrote a song. And then I wrote another one. And it was through my intense emotional moments that I literally was the most creative, and the words would come through. And usually what happens is the words come and then I put like music to it.
Yeah.
And it always like the most powerful songs, literally they come through so fast. I can't write fast enough.
Yeah.
It's like that. And so I'm not like my music, this is what I tell people. My music and my songs, and this is also because people have been wanting me to record my songs like in an album forever. And that's something that I still want to do. But it is so hard to find the right people or producer to work with that can understand what's happening, what my songs actually are. Because my songs are meant to be sung in the moment. That's the magic. My songs and my singing are my light language, is what I tell people. So it's hard to put that into like a finished product. I know it can be done, but anyways, I digress.
No digression. So
that's
cool.
what it is for
So
me.
cool.
It's like poetry, channeling. Something's coming through there. Like I cannot describe the emotion that I feel when the lyrics come through, when the song gets finished, and it's all Like I will literally come up with a song and in hours it'll be done and like finished.
Mm. Yeah, it's actually the same for me. So my darkest times um, have given birth to some of my best writing. And what I have on my phone, if I ever die anybody, is a series of recordings, like many, 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 many voice recordings that were existential epiphanies born in the shadow, born in the darkness. So there'll be moments with tears, there'll be moments of laughter, maniacal, joy and ecstatic bliss coming from the darkest chambers of my psyche. And those have all been since translated into some type of poem that
Right.
I tend to use and I've been following throughout my journey. So cool how you've experienced that too. Not cool how you've experienced the dark times, but cool how you've been able to turn it into something that's golden, right? Outside of that, I wanted to point out another little metaphor for you, which is you were talking about the 14 and a half year cycle that you just kind of came up to. And the beginning of that, you were talking about sitting around a circle at your death, if you will, right? At your death. And you were singing peyote songs. But now, at the end of your circle, at the end of your cycle, the 14 and a half year cycle, when things quantum leaped for you, you're creating your own songs. And I think there's so much beauty in the symbolism behind that, because once we come to who we are, we begin to create, because we realize we're the ones behind this whole experience. We're aligning ourselves so that we can figure out who we are. And once we figure out who we are, we begin to write the music. And I've always loved to call life a song, right? Because it's called universe, which is like single metrical rhythm. That's literally what it means. But also because everything points to that. Even the myths. If you take the myth of Osiris all the way down, it's talking about how he tunes the 7 chakras along the cosmic harmonies, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a song. So it's talking about us coming into alignment to realize that we are instruments for the infinity to play through us. And once we become one, we hear the song. Every myth will point you to this divine truth. It's just saying, wake the hell up, wake up, right? Listen. I actually last night I wrote something for my team, because we have these quotes that are going to go out with each of our reels. It literally says, becoming is the song, questioning doubts sound, knowing listens, and being loves music. And
I love that.
it's the truth.
I love that.
It's the truth. You're playing out your song, and when you show up in front of somebody, they feel it. They feel that transmission. So I gotta say, I know you got a long list of people who want reads from you. Thank you for doing mine. It was so illuminating. I mean, I've listened to it twice, and it's been 3 days.
I love that.
I'm going to keep using it. I'm going to keep learning the systems. I actually have that book en route to me by Richard Rudd. So I think that's amazing. I think the work you're doing is awesome. I think this is just the beginning. I actually know all of those things. I know this is just the beginning for you. And I'm really excited for you. I'm really happy for you. And I'm really grateful for your time.
Thank you so much. This last, like a week ago, I had a reading it was like a surprise reading. I'd never actually gotten a reading from an astrologer, a professional astrologer. Christopher Witecki is his name. He has developed his own system called the Step System. And I was so excited. I was invited to be on his podcast. And then he was like, I want to do a trade. And I'm like, great. So we did a trade. And he did a reading for me. And he blew my mind with what he saw in my chart. And I kid you not, he said the exact same thing you just said. This is just the beginning. He said, we haven't seen anything yet. Like we've seen nothing yet, like of the potential of you. So I'm receiving this, like, right? The universe is bringing me this message through you, through him. So I'm like, I don't know, just receiving it right now. Thank you for saying that.
No, my
Exciting.
pleasure. Honestly, my pleasure. You are a light. You really are.
But I feel like also, I just want to say about you that you are like really like tuned in and tapped in, and it's so refreshing to see. And it reminds me of this is happening everywhere. Like
Mm.
sometimes you can feel kind of alone on this like
Mm.
quote unquote spiritual path. You can feel a little bit alone because at least it seems like the people, not everyone around you understands you or can hang with conversations like this. I mean, honestly, like some people don't would not understand. Not that it's a good thing or a bad thing, right? There's no judgment. It's just it can feel lonely because it's not that many people, but this tells me that it is. It's like this stuff is out there. This stuff is growing. It's expanding. It's like coming alive. And right as we're entering into the Aquarian age, and it's beautiful to see as well in you the
Mm.
knowledge, you know, and this the consciousness and this like deeper awareness, self-awareness. So you are right there, and you're coming up on your Saturn return.
My
And
calendar is marked. Yeah.
but I love it because this is the shift. It's like, what if we entered into these very powerful transformative moments in our lives with awareness instead of lack thereof? What would
Mm.
change? What would be different? So you are literally the pioneer of that new age where we step in knowing who we are, or at least knowing what we're becoming and having a clear image of all the tools that I have on my path along the way. I don't know. I don't know what that world would look like, but it seems like so many things would change because of the awareness that comes with, you know, studying all this stuff and being open to receiving the information, because it's not that easy to be like
Mm.
known as, like, at least in my family, I'm like, people want they like they're like, yeah, Chai, like so amazing, you know, she's like awesome astrologer and all this stuff, but I'm like the black sheep, you know. They're like, I'm not really sure, you know. So it's we're still at a place where like the exciting part is that I see it when I see you have such like an eloquence and a deep connection to these teachings, these stories, and this wisdom. It makes me feel like, yes, this is powerful, this is beautiful. But again, we're connecting because we're on that same vibrational
Mm.
frequency. But that's what's going to keep happening, and I see it more and more in the collective with all these other people. For example, like Robert Grant, like the things that he talks about, and not just him. I mean, there's like tons. He's just like the one most in my mind lately, but there's tons of people out there like bringing this wisdom back. It's coming back. So it's
It's
refreshing
here.
to see in you
It's
as
here.
well.
Thank you for all of
Yeah.
that. It means a lot. And that, of course, it's mirrored. Of course it is. And one thing I'll say is the thing that liberates and empowers us is when we lean into who we are,
Mm.
right? Not being afraid. I am so much better for my friends, for my family, because I am not them, because I am me.
Mm.
And so it doesn't matter how they look at me, because I deep down feel the best when I am me. And that's it, right? I want that
Truth.
for everybody. Yeah.
That's that.
Okay,
Not right
I
there.
gotta show you one last thing.
Okay.
In terms of synchronicities, in terms of all of these things.
Okay.
I want to call back briefly to yoga and its involvement in your story,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your resonance with the Eastern traditions and your beginning, your roots there, if you will. Do you know what your name means?
Yes.
You want to start?
Yeah. So the name that the name Jai Gobind was given to me when I was very deeply into the Kundalini yoga community.
Okay.
And it's like everybody went to this website. It's called 3ho.org, and you can request your spiritual name. And the way that they come up with it is through looking at your birth date, your numerology. And they have Yogi Bhajan was I studied Kundalini Yoga as taught by Yogi Bhajan. So he was the one who handed down the system of giving people their spiritual names, but it was aligned with their astrology, numerology, and all of that. So when they give you your spiritual name, you have to use it. And the more you use it, you're stepping into the full embodiment of who you are.
Right.
So as I understand it, Jai means victory. Gobind is the sustaining life force of the universe. So victory to the sustaining life force of the universe, which is why once I got my spiritual name, I started using it only from that moment on, which was also part of this. I'm so glad you brought this up, because it was a complete part of my stepping into this new identity, this true self, you could say. But I'd love to hear what you have to say about it.
No, I mean, I think that speaks to it. First of all, I was like, that's not a damn Argentinian name, Jai. But this is what I've gotten, and then I'll let you think about how much this resonates with where you're at and what you're doing. And damn, is this cool. Ready? So let's start with Jai, victory or glory, as you said. Gobind, a variant of Govind, another name for Lord Krishna, translating to finder of cows or cowherd. And as you know, in the Vedic systems, there's a lot of symbolism to the cows. I can get into that at the end. But together, it's interpreted as victory to the cowherd. Victory honoring Lord Krishna. Hold on. So when you look deeper into it, like what would the symbolism of the cows be, right? If you want to say, what is the symbolism of the cows? Because it's victory to the cowherd, the herd.
This is insane.
Divine nurturance and abundance. Earth and nature. Sacred protector of Dharma, which you literally go and teach people what their life path is, what their Dharma is. Alchemical symbol of transmutation. That's gene keys in a nutshell. Emotional intelligence in the heart. Your divine feminine coming up in literally everything. And then in the context of Jai Gobind, this is the victory of the cowherd. It means returning others to their mother frequency, gentleness, love, healing, guiding others from the spiritual wild back into the garden of the soul, honoring the sacred feminine within a chaotic world. Yeah.
Another mind-blown moment. So Hathor is the cow goddess in ancient Egypt.
Sure.
Right? There's a huge symbolism there to why we call the Milky Way, because the cow gives milk. In Egypt, the temple of Dendera is the temple of Hathor, who is the cow goddess, right? She is Hathor, the house of Horus. Horus is the god of the sun. Hathor is the cosmic mother who holds the sun inside of her. So when you go to the temple of Dendera, it's the temple where you learn all of the astrology. It was the temple where they found the first rendition of the constellations, a map of the constellations in the sky. The entire ceiling of the temple of Dendera is blue, which is representative of goddess Nut, who is the sky goddess.
Of the net, weaving the net.
Yes, yes. And so, and then you
the
have...
Matrix.
And then you have... This is crazy. So then you have the cosmic mother who holds our sun, the solar system, and all the planets within her. She is the cow goddess. She is the Milky Way. And in Egypt also, the Great Pyramid was called Bull Mountain. And on the wall of the king's chamber has been found a bull, like a baby bull and a mother bull. And inside there's a diamond. Robert talks about this. He's the one that discovered these things. All of the constellations that he's discovered on the wall point to it being like a clock, a stargate.
Right.
But specifically, the bull constellation is the Taurus constellation. But there's a star, and it's the eye of the bull. And that star is called Aldebaran. And my Venus, who is the goddess of love and beauty in my natal chart, is exactly on Aldebaran. And I have a lot of what I call Hathor and Venusian starseed markings in my chart, specifically my Mercury, which is at 22 degrees of Taurus in my chart. And Mercury is about communication and speaking your truth, mind, processing thoughts. But this is a Hathor starseed marking. And one other thing that I know about the Hathors is that they're all about singing, vibrations, frequency. Like the Hathors, if you look up the Hathors, they're like this collective that stargate, starseeds that channel this song. It's the song of the mother. And I channel that through my songs. So
Yeah.
so this is
Let me continue this.
Yes,
So
yes.
in Hebrew, the name Deborah, which is very similar, Deborah means a bee. And so it's literally the buzzing, the vibration, the sound, the song. The beautiful thing too is you literally live in an unfinished house. You live in an unfinished house, carrying in Horus, right? So if you think about going back to the poem here, right? Becoming is the song. Your house is becoming. And so the bee is playing the song of becoming. Being is becoming.
That's so crazy. It's amazing. Wow. This was amazing.
Yeah. The stars don't tell us who we are. They remind us of what we've always been. In the wake of this conversation, you may not remember every transit, every gate, every key, but if you listen closely, something ancient stirs. Not new knowledge, but recognition. What if the blueprint isn't a map to follow, but a song to sing, a spiral to dance, and a prayer to live? Jai showed us that the codes are alive, and when reflected through a heart that sees, they don't just describe your path, they activate it. So breathe, not to fix, not to grasp, but to feel what's already moving through you. You're not here to follow the path. You are the path, and someone out there is waiting to walk it beside you.